Hi, this is Shannon Shea for First Person Monster Blog. Today I'm going to show you some footage, some behind the scenes footage from Monster Squad. So jumping right into it, this is the maquette that Matt Rose sculpted for the Gill Man. You know, there was some downtime where we started prepping things slowly but surely, and you can see that Matt had a little time to do a really beautiful, intricate job on this sculpture. And if you look closely, there is Stan's original design. Here's a foot sculpture, a Gillman foot sculpture being done by Steve Wang, and there I am demonstrating how I've cut apart the Wolfman cores before I started sculpting them. And here's John Rosengrant painting eye designs for the Wolfman. In those days, we used to send the eye art out to a company in England called Nissels, who used to make all of our eyes for us. Here is the beginning of one of the Dracula transformation arms from bat to human being roughed out by Tom Woodruff. And there's Matt Rose, who's preparing some finger extensions before he starts sculpting Gillman gloves. And then here you can see the Dracula transformation arms a bit further along. There's Lindsay McGowan and Steve Wang. Lindsay's sculpting a small Dracula bat, and Steve is sculpting fins for the Gillman. As with any of these projects, you know, you can only do procedurally what you're available to do. We're waiting for actors to show up and do live casts, and then we have to take those casts and make molds of those casts so we can produce sculpting armatures. So sculpting, you know, feet and fins and bats and transformation arms is what we could do at the time while we waited for actors to become available and their live casts to be finished. Okay, we're a bit further along here. You can see Matt working on his Gillman hands and the incredible amount of detail that went into them. I think everyone's tired of me saying how incredible it was that Matt and Steve, I think Steve must have been 19 at the time and Matt was 20 at the time while they were working on Monster Squad, and they just did an incredible job. They really brought an incredible skill set with them at such a young age. It was, you know, just unprecedented. There's Michigo Tagawa, who was a Japanese artist that had worked with Stan on The Thing, and she was just an incredible fabricator and worked quite extensively with Shane. There's Eric Fiedler, who is an incredible multi-talented artist that I'd worked with on House, and he was making molds there of Steve Wang's feet, Gillman feet. Now, folks, we're into Wolfman country, and this is what John Rosengrant supervised the construction of the Wolfman. It was very important that it was a Wolfman and not a werewolf. And, you know, John was very smart in his planning his strategy. You know, he sculpted the head, or roughed out the head in oil clay, and the body in wet clay, and that way he could finish off the body musculature first, and then we could mold it and then produce the pieces we needed to make the undersuit. I sculpted the hands. These are the first set of hands, and unfortunately they were not the right size, and I had to bang out another set of hands that weren't very good in a day. Very disappointing. And there's Tom continuing to his work on the Dracula transformation hands. He worked on these while all the Tom Noonan work was being done, the live cast prep work. And here is Shane working on the mummy. So Shane's working on a puppet head and the mask head for actor Michael McKay simultaneously. And Tom, who shot this footage, is intercutting it with sketches of Stan's design for the mummy. Speak of the devil, there's Stan making an appearance in the makeup room to borrow the petty cash box. We miss you, Stan. I know I do. Welcome to the mechanical shop. There is Dave Kindlin, and behind him is Richard Landon, and in the background there's Steve James. And Steve James is working on one of the mechanical zombies that appears at the beginning of the film that attacks Van Helsing as they're trying to read the magical incantation that sends Dracula into the void. There's Richard Landon working on one of the Dracula transformation arms. And there is Dave Kindlin working on the Dracula bat, and there's Dave Nelson conferring with him. So, our crack mechanical team, incredible job on Monster Squad. So again, some time has passed, and now we have a polyfoam muscle suit that is covered with a lycra or spandex covering that Lenny McDonald is painting to kind of enhance the Wolfman musculature, and into this there's going to be some hair tied into it to make the Wolfman suit. I want to say that he painted at least one or two of these for the show. It was amazing the amount of detail that Lenny was able to put into that paint job. This is the John Gries transformation puppet head sculpture that is being worked on by John Rosengrant, and Stan was really insistent that instead of doing a series of heads, we just do one puppet head. They could pretty much do everything. So John sculpted that head out of a clay press of John Grice's life cast. And here's Emilio Gonzalez, who was a transplant from New York, working on a Wolfman transformation back appliance sculpture. You know, he put air bladders underneath the finished piece and some rigid spines that kind of moved up and down. Here I am working on the Wolfman transformation arm, the ill-fated Wolfman transformation arm. Putting in all this detail on the palm first, and then I mounted the hand back on the arm and finished it off, although in the long run it wouldn't matter. One-take effects are always a gamble, and it's just this one didn't work out. That's okay. I'm sure there's plenty of other things I've done in my career that have failed just as spectacularly. Here are one of the mechanical zombies. This one was done by Dave Kinlan using some techniques that he had learned at the Muppets for making a radio-controlled Muppet. You know, you would have a little control that you could move your hand, and this would mimic it perfectly. Okay, we leave the shop for a little while, and now we're on set. That is Matt Rose and Steve Wang, and they are working with Tom Woodruff, who is in the Gillman suit, and you can see Tom manipulating his abdomen. It was amazing that they shaved down Tom's body core before they sculpted it, so it was really tight on Tom, so anything that he did kind of transferred through the suit. And his arms were over his head, because that was a technique that Matt and Steve liked to do, where they'd put their actor in their suit and they'd put his hands over his head and rip out the armpits, and then they would go in and repair them so they were perfect. When they raised their hands over their head, like when the creature comes out of the water holding Frankenstein's coffin, the armpits are perfect. They're not ripped out or looking funky. That's a major stress point on most suits. And now they're putting the head on. The head was glued around the neck. Once Tom got into the suit and zipped up the back, they glued a fin on the back to hide the zipper. They glued the head onto the body, and they glued the hands and the feet onto the body. And so once Tom was in, he was in. Okay, so now we'll have some Gillman trivia. Few people know that on the actual sculpture of the Gillman head that Matt Rose did, hidden within the scales on his neck, in fact it's right kind of in the center, almost at the chest, one of the scales Matt sculpted as a little portrait of the original creature from the Black Lagoon. It's just tiny. It's almost indiscernible. It's one of those little things that eccentricities that sculptors like to do when they're sculpting something that's as intricate as the Gillman. And the beautiful eyes there with the gold leaf, those were made by Lenny McDonald. And if you look closely, you can see that Tom just saw out of just the narrowest gap between the eye and the skin there. And here is a puppet head that was made for a shot where the creature eats a fly out of the air like a frog. I don't even know if this even made it in front of camera. Here are Stan Winston and actor Tom Noonan, and Tom is being made up to play the Frankenstein's monster. All the appliances were sculpted by Tom Woodruff, and did a fantastic job. And Tom made all the little clamps that go across the forehead and the little bolts that got moved from the neck to the sides of the head. I wanted to share this with you. This is pretty typical of what the Monster Squad monster trailer was like when we were in the throes of it. In the background there, you see actor Carl Tebow, who played the Wolfman, grabbing the bottom of his spandex hood and pulling it down, giving his face a rest, because, he felt it was a little too tight around his face. And there's Shane suiting up Michael McKay in his mummy suit. And, it was a fairly lengthy procedure, like the Gill Man. Shane had to put him in his suit and zip it up the back, and there were like loose bandages that Shane had to remember how he wrapped them to cover the zipper, and then he would blacken around Michael McKay's eyes, and then he would attach teeth to obviously the outside of Michael's lips to kind of hide the fact that Michael even had lips at that point, since they had rotted off, and then he would put the mask on, and in some cases, Michael, it was glued around his eyes in case there were close-ups, and he actually had one fogged lens that he would wear occasionally, and then Shane would have to close the mask in the back and then wrap the bandages. Then once all that was done, then the gloves went on, and again, there was bandages that had to be wrapped around, and John Rosengrant is helping there, and then once that was done, he put his feet on, same procedure, and then it was, a little tidying up, and off to set he would go to scare kids and Monster Squad. Meanwhile, back in the shop, there's Lenny McDonald and Grant Arndt, and they're working on the Dracula transformation body under the supervision of Alec Gillis. This is for when Frankenstein throws Dracula through a window and they come across him and he's in mid-transformation. And we're being read there by Alec Gillis, who has a little something to say.
Mr. Big. I am Mr. Big. Yes, it's true. See my size relative to this young man. Proof, Mr. Big.